Hello, I'm Jacob Kruger, and this is the Write Your Screenplay podcast.
So I'm here today with Jenna Laurenzo. Jenna is a wonderful actor, a wonderful writer, a wonderful filmmaker. She is the writer, director, and star of Lesbom. And she's also a student of ours, and so it's very exciting to get to talk to you. You're one of those actors, we always talk about actors creating your own material and the value of that. And you're one of the actors who really saw the value of that. So I wish you could talk, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about like what that experience was like and how that all worked for you. How did you start writing?
Oh my gosh. Well, what's really funny is, do you remember when I first started studying with you, like forever ago? It was before you had the studio.
Yeah. In my little art studio in Williamsburg.
Yeah, and I wanted to do a web series then. And like when I went to school, I studied writing and directing. Like that was my focus. And I did some acting, and the acting teacher at Carnegie Mellon really encouraged me to do a deep dive into acting after I graduated, exclusively just for a period of time. Mm-hmm. And then after that year of conservatory is when I found you. And I started writing these like short web series things, and we don't have a lot of money, like you can't like find a lot of performers, and like so I found as many performers as I could, and I was one of them because I also knew I didn't have to pay myself. And so it was like one of those things where it was just like I wanted to write and I wanted to create content, and sometimes it was just easier to just do it all, because when you're scrambling to find the finances, the less people you have to worry about, the better. Yeah.
And well, you wrote roles that were great for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think like, and I know that I'm guessing, like, because in some of when I listen to the way you approach, like even in the TV writing series class I'm taking with you now, like when I listen to the way you approach writing, there seems to be sort of that, if you want to call it spiritual way in, or I see it as spiritual, but I look at it like, well, what are the themes that I'm grappling with, or the lessons I have yet to learn, and then I get really curious about those and exploring them through the writing. And then also with acting, you get to sort of embody those things in a way that can like move through the body. And I think that is a great way to learn lessons.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about writing as a spiritual practice. And I think acting is a spiritual practice too. A lot of people think about acting as, performance or something you do for others. And that's obviously a part of it, but it's also really just a deep dive into your own subconscious, just like writing is.
Sure. Yeah. And in many ways, I think both writing and acting and directing, because you have to put yourself out there and your voice out there. In many ways, it's an invitation of like practicing letting go and self-acceptance and self-compassion. And so I have found that while the younger version of me thought that like it was like in direct opposition with the spiritual path, I have found that it's like in perfect alignment, because there's nothing that challenges my ego more.
Yes. We talk about it in class all the time, right? That desire to be a good writer, like that ego desire, right?
Sure.
That we all have, or to be a good actor, or to nail that scene, right? And the process of actually letting go of that and going like, all I have to do is be truthful in this moment and say something that's truthful and write something that's truthful.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting, and you might like this. Like recently, I've been like singing and playing my guitar, and I have some musician friends, and when I'm like, oh my God, this is freaking scary. They talk about the channeling, the vulnerability, and ultimately, what is interesting, and it aligns with all of these things is it's really about sort of singing in tune with your own voice instead of trying to be another voice.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, I always love to think about Bob Dylan. He's an artist that I admire a lot. But one of the reasons I admire him is, no one was saying to Bob, hey man, with that voice, you have to be a singer,
Yeah.
And, he just became obsessed with Woody Guthrie, and he wanted to be Woody Guthrie. And he tried to play like Woody Guthrie. And then once he figured out how to play like Woody Guthrie, he figured out how to sing like Bob Dylan,
Yeah.
And, following those crazy instincts. I mean, that's where art is really born. Art is not a rational process, and success, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about your success, but success is not a rational process too. It's a crazy process where things that you would never think lead to something that you'd never think they could lead to, it's
Right,
such an interesting journey. And so, harnessing that passion and going, what is that thing that I care about so much that, like, I'm willing to do it if I'm terrible at it. I'm willing to do it if I suck at it. I'm willing to do it if the learning curve takes me 10 years or a lifetime, because I need to do it. And I've always felt like, that's how I feel about teaching. I'm obsessive about it. I need to do it. And I always feel like if you're doing something that fits that kind of passion for you, you're in a wonderful position, because if you spend every day of your life doing something you love that much, even if you don't have success or success takes a long time, you have a very valuable life.
Sure.
But I also think it gives you the best chance for success because, it's that kind of passion that is required to break through the noise of everybody else who's trying to achieve this same goal.
Yeah, exactly. I do think that you have to have that passion to fuel the engine it requires to get a project going and then completed. Like, you need like a lot of energy.
Yes. Yes, it's always going to be a little bit harder than you thought.
Yeah, and I always tell young filmmakers or people who are like, how do I get my movie made? And I'm always like, just assume no one else cares. No one cares. You're the only one who cares, and just assume that as much as you care about this, everyone that is going to be working on your project has their version of this, so they don't have the same amount of energy that you can put into this.
Yeah. Yes. And one of the things, I don't know if you've found this, but I've always found, when I'm working in production and you have that kind of energy, weird synergies happen where just angels appear.
Yeah.
And I don't even believe in angels, but I know they show up.
Yeah. I believe in angels. I talk about this all the time. I believe in angels, and I also believe in angels on this earth. But I say with Lesbom in particular, there are people who I refer to as angels that appeared in my life that handheld me through certain things I had no understanding of, that just miraculously showed up when I needed them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's I remember I was directing one of my first plays that I produced myself. So, producing your own stuff is so crazy and so overwhelming. And it was set in Japan, and in ancient Japan, and I have like $6 for costumes. I don't even know how I'm gonna pull this off, And we're in the theater one day, and this girl walks in, and she's just like, "What are you doing?" And we're like, "Oh, we're rehearsing a play." And she's like, "Do you need costumes? Because I can sew." And this random woman appeared and just sewed our kimonos.
Love that.
And we also, East West Players in Los Angeles helped us out. Like there were a lot of angels that got involved in that project and helped us. But it is kind of amazing that, the force of, because I think so few people actually walk their true path. So many of us have a calling that we're afraid to follow.
Yeah.
And when you actually start taking those steps onto your true path, I think it's incredibly attractive for people. It's people want to be involved with people who are authentic and who are living authentically.
Yeah, because look, I think it's terrifying, but the alternative is more terrifying. We sort of have to get through those first what are those things where you walk over fire?
Yeah.
you gotta do that, and I think that those initial steps are, I mean, they're always scary. There's always those moments in life, but if you can sort of move past the fear, there's something always greater on the other side.
Yeah. So you produced a movie, your first feature, with how many Academy Award-winning stars?
Well, Cloris. Bruce had just been nominated, and he is, he's interesting because he's so terrifying in many ways.
We're talking about Bruce Dern.
Yeah, sorry, Bruce Dern. Yeah, so he is, he's intimidating because he's Bruce Dern, and Cloris is intimidating too, but Bruce is just razor sharp with his intuition, and he'll tell you exactly what's going on with everyone. And it's really interesting because he doesn't hold back when he wants to share.
Do you have a terrifying Bruce Dern story to share with us?
Oh my God, I have so many wonderful, oh my gosh. The first day on, oh my Lord. Okay, the first day he showed up on set, his holding was my childhood bedroom, because we shot it in my family home, because these are the locations I had access to. So I immediately regret that, because I'm looking around and everyone's oh my God, this set decoration is amazing in here, but my childhood bedroom was preserved. So I would say the most embarrassing decor that was added for the movie was actually just there. And Bruce was he was making fun of me left and right about this room, and then he comes on to the set and we're ready to shoot this scene, and him and Cloris, the thing about it is we shot that movie in 15 days, so there wasn't a lot of time to improvise. We shot what was on the page for the most part. Now Bruce got a little leeway because he's Bruce, and he sometimes he fires off what he calls Dernsies. And on that first day, he warned me. He gave me a high compliment for my script, and I should have seen that I was about to get
trouble.
yeah. So he was he's I know why you cast me, and I was uh-huh, and he's Grandpa doesn't have a lot of lines. I'm gonna give him some, and I was oh crap. But he does. He sometimes you just have to have you just have a little faith, allow a little room, and there were moments where him and Cloris were they kind of got at it and improvising, and I was cut. Are we fighting? Or are we improvising?
Yeah.
But the two of them, you see them work, and you're oh, you understand immediately why they're legends, because there's such flexibility and freedom in their choices without fearing that they're the right choices.
Yeah.
They commit and they go for it.
I love that, because it's so true about writing too. When we get obsessed with trying to make the right choices, trying to do it right, trying to do it well, right? We forget that, we're in the business of play. That actually we're supposed to be playing, we're supposed to be exploring, we're supposed to be learning rather than controlling. And,
Yes.
you know, when you watch two gifted actors play, right, you see the lightning.
Yeah.
And then there's, you know, that very challenging directorial job, right? Which is, you know, it's easier on set when you've got an actor and you've got a director, and the director can go, hey, Bruce, keep that. Hey, you know, okay, now let's do it again like this, right? You have an outside person who's watching, you know,
Yeah.
and in screenwriting, it's more challenging because the inside person who's watching is also you.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and in a lot of ways on set of that film, it was sort of the same scenario because I was in a lot of those scenes.
Yeah.
So similar to the writing process, when it is you sort of, for me, I have to trust, and my friend always makes fun of me for saying this because I'm like, do I feel it in my body or do I not?
Yeah.
But like, and that's the only way I can describe it is like, does it ring true here?
Yeah.
You know, and I can only trust that.
Yeah, that's what they call kinesthetic learning. It means that there are four main modalities that people learn, and it's actually, as a screenwriter, you could think about those are the four modalities you want to hit in your script, because it means regardless of the learning style of the person who's reading it, they're going to experience it. And so kinesthetic means that you primarily learn by feeling, right? And that's why you feel it in your body when it's right.
Right.
Whereas if you're speaking to a visual and you say, well, you'll feel it when it's right, and they're going to be like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Because for someone who primarily learns visual, they'll know when they see it.
Yeah, this is 100% why my wife and I get into arguments. I told her she had to read poetry, like she was listening with her heart, and
Yeah.
she's like, why are you answering me with one riddle after another?
So yeah, so you could check what's her modality. So, you know, just people, it's so easy to know. You know, people who are primarily visual, they'll say, oh, I see that, that's clear, you know. And then it becomes so easy because you want to use words like that. You want to go visual when you talk to them, even in a pitch, right? To a kinesthetic, you might go like, how does that feel to you? Does that resonate? You know, whereas to a visual, you'd say, well, how do you see that? Right? Or
Right.
to an auditory, someone who primarily learns by hearing, you'd be like, what does that sound like to you? You know? And so, and these same modalities are so valuable when you're writing. You know, many years ago, my accountant took my Write Your Screenplay class, and it turns out she's a lovely writer, but she's an auditory. And we were doing this, you know, I teach how to hypnotize a reader with your formatting, right? And we were working on action, and she absolutely could not see it. She just couldn't see. And we tried going through feeling, and she couldn't feel. And then finally I said, well, what do you hear? Because she was just seeing blank, right? And she said, I hear a ceiling fan. And then I was like, and what does it look like? She's like, oh, there's dust on it. And suddenly she was able to step into the whole room, but she had to go through that auditory way of learning. And so
Interesting.
you're kind of recognizing who you are as an artist. And we all have all of these modalities. The fourth one is called digital learning. And digital learning is logical learning. Which is funny because everybody in the world thinks they're a digital, because this is our entire education system is built on digital learning. You know, in 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue.
Right.
That, you know, it cause effect, right? We think that we're digital learners, but in my entire career teaching, I've only taught one digital learner.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I'm not that.
Yeah, there are so few, and it's one of the reasons that voices get obscured, right? Is, you know, so much of the teaching is this very conscious mind, you know, analytical, this leads to that approach. And if you happen to be a digital learner, if you're like the 1 in 1,000 person people who primarily learn that way, you know, you're going to read one of these very analytical books, and that analysis, you know, is going to lead you into your heart and into your vision and into your hearing. But if you're a normal human being, there are very few of these people, you know. And if you learn like most, we learn through our emotions, we learn through what we see, we learn through what we feel, and we learn through what we hear. You can tell auditory is my weakest. Right? I'm like, what is that last one? And so in an early draft of a script, you know, or you can just be like, well, what do I feel? Well, what do I see? And then as you start to flush it out, you can go, well, what does it sound like? You know, have I thought about the sound? You know, that for me, that's often last because it's where I'm weak.
Yeah, I think I feel, hear, see in the digital is last.
Yes. Yes. And digital is last for probably 99% of people in the world.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, there's some really interesting theory on this. If you know, economists used to believe that that people thought logically. You know, negotiators used to think that, you know, negotiations are rational procedure. You know, all this education was all very digital, right?
Right.
But if you read like the more recent behavioral economists, people like Dan Ariely, for example, who has a book called Predictably Irrational, which will blow your mind. You know, you realize that even the business world is starting to realize that, you know, we're not put together from a rational place. We're put together from an emotional place, that we're spiritual creatures, you know?
Right, of course. Nobody's logical.
Yeah, yes, no, and your audience is not logical. And the things that are so logical and make so much sense in the script are often not the things that move people, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm always interested in like what lands with people and why.
Yeah.
Like what moments, and some of the stuff was on the page and some of the stuff was discovered on set.
Yeah.
You know?
I would love for you to talk you know, one of the things about when you have a strong script, you know, a lot of people think, you know, our job as screenwriters is to control everything. And the opposite is true. What a great script does is actually gives people the freedom to do their best art. You know? And so I really liked what you were saying about like, hey, we had to shoot the script. But within the script, the actors found the opportunity to do what they needed to do and find things.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of writers make the mistake of going, you know, well, I'll just let the actors figure that out. I'll just let the directors figure that out, you know, and when you do that, you're not giving the actors or the director the opportunity to do the best work, because now they have to do your job.
Right.
You know, where what you really want, especially when you're working with great people, you want them to come in and go, oh, the story's here, the structure's here, the humor's here, the journey's here, the theme is here, everything's here. Now I get to go in and I get to deepen it and explore it and add layers to it and complicate it and amplify it and all that kind of wonderful stuff. And so I would love for you just to kind of walk us through the process. You know, how did you go from, you know, writing fun web series ideas for yourself to producing a major feature with major talent in it? Like what was it? What did that journey look like? And what did the development of that script look like?
Well, so I wasn't going to direct it and I wasn't going to star in it. And because people had told me that would be impossible. You know, and then you listen to people.
Yeah. And
I spent 6 years trying to attach both a writer, both a director and a star. And I kept writing and writing and rewriting. And the first draft of that script was dramatic because I wasn't comfortable with my sexuality. Yeah, you know? And then, you know, like 6 years later, you have the distance between the emotion and that, you know, that distance, you can see it then through a comedic lens.
Yes.
And when finally the script got into the hands of Rob Moran through a casting director friend of mine, and I had before this, I was like, okay, everybody kept telling me I was going to have to direct it and star in it myself if this thing was ever going to get made. Just how this is like, and this is after everyone told me that that would never happen, but it was like, I was like listening to the same people, like as if like these statements were diamonds of truth, and then I realized when they were telling me the exact opposite of what they had told me with the same amount of conviction. Yeah. I was like, okay, no one knows anything.
Yeah.
And I decided, I was like, okay, I'm gonna star and direct in it. I want to make this film now. And I decided to do a short film as a proof of concept to show what that would look like. And that short film was called Girl Night Stand, and I released it online, and it went viral. And what that did was allowed me to show investors that there was an audience who had an appetite for this kind of content.
Yeah. So I wanted to stop you there because it's so important. We live in such an exciting time for writers and actors, and directors. I mean, it's tough right now with COVID, but when I was coming up, you had to have $1 million to make a movie. It was absolutely the idea of, oh, I'm going to make a short film, that's going to prove that I can do this, didn't exist.
Right.
And the distribution didn't exist. So you could make a short film, but who was going to see it? How were you going to build audience? And the ability to just go, well, there's a story I want to tell, and let me do a tiny little version of that kind of shows what's it going to feel like and what is it going to look like, and it's going to have a little story there. And the tone of that piece is obviously also very, very important, because it shows your physical comedy and
right.
and so how do you go viral? How did that happen? Because I'm sure people are so curious.
Yep, I'm curious too. So I mean, there was some strategy involved, but then you sort of have to surrender.
Yeah.
So I found the traditional route is to go to festivals, and I just didn't think that was going to do anything for what I needed. Because unless the short wins at Sundance, which has a particular vibe and tone in itself, and I just didn't think that this was I wasn't doing that.
Yeah.
And you can't prove to investors who's in the theater at a festival. It's not really.
It was packed. It was a packed house.
Yeah, it's not. What I didn't think it would be helpful for this project. So I reached out to a friend of mine who writes for LGBTQ publications and said, hey, and she wasn't a friend at the time. Now she's a good friend of mine. Yeah. At the time, I was a fan of her writing, and her she's a critic, and she writes about representation in the media, and I loved her voice. So I said to her, hey, I made this thing. Would you want to do a premiere on your site? And so I put it on Vimeo, and then she wrote about it. It was released on that site. And then on Vimeo, it sort of capped out at 500,000 views, but people kept ripping it off of Vimeo and putting on YouTube. And so then the YouTube people told me I had to put it on YouTube so that I could do copyright claims.
Uh-huh.
So then I put it on YouTube, and now it's well over 11 million views. And it got ripped off of YouTube and uploaded to a site in China and went viral in China. It was this whole thing. It was so interesting, but it was wildly helpful to see the analytics, and also as a filmmaker gave me a much more grounded perspective about reviews or criticisms, because I could see when people wrote about it what actually drove traffic.
Yeah.
And, sometimes we hold on to these things because somebody says something terrible, but then you look at the numbers and you're like, no one else saw that.
Yes.
And it sort of gives you so you don't hold on to that stuff as long.
Yes. And I think, I love what you're saying about feedback, and criticism is, we get so much advice. And it's always conflicting, or it's out of date. You know, it was a great advice 3 years ago. It was great advice 15 years ago, you know. You know, and we get so many different kinds of conflicting feedback. You know, this person says it's great, you win this festival, you don't get to the second round in that festival. You know, we get so many confusing pieces of feedback, and I think it's about coming back to what we talk about, you know, and it's not working in a vacuum. You know, it's about seeking mentorship. It's about learning from people. It's about building your network of people that you trust, you know, but it's about really being careful who you take feedback from, you know, and making sure that it's somebody that you really trust.
Sure. Yeah.
And that, you know, it's not about, you know, I always feel like if people are primarily giving you advice, don't trust them. You know, if people are primarily asking you questions that help you figure out the answers, well, you know, like those are your mentors. Those are your people that you want to connect to.
Yeah, the people who force you to ask the right questions. Because the thing is like when we start to get feedback, you know, you talk about feeling it, but like also when your emotions start to be like, it muddies that what you're feeling and what that feedback is. So I do think it is really important to surround yourself with people whose work you trust, whose voice you trust, because then even when your emotions are making your own sort of reference point a little blurry, you know where you get what you need from those people because you already know what you value from them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so I'm sorry, I interrupted your story. Keep your story.
Yeah, so then once it went viral, like, then the script landed in Rob Moran's hand, and he was like, "We're gonna make this movie in 4 months." And I was like, "Oh my God, what? Whoa!" And then I knew that the script was in a good place, but I knew it wasn't perfect. And then I came running to you, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm directing and starring in this movie in 4 months. I need to make sure this every single beat is like hitting because there's not going to be a lot of time to think on set."
Yeah.
You know, we're going to be moving quick.
And so talk about what's the difference, you know, because you're a writer, you're a director, and you're a star. What is the difference in the way that you look at a piece when you are a writer versus the way you look at it when you're putting on your director hat versus the way you think about it when you're putting on your star hat?
Right. Well, I guess, and you know, you've been a teacher of mine for a long time now, and so has as an actor and person, you know, another mentor is John Dapolito, and
I have so much respect for. He's a wonderful. If you're an actor and you're not aware of John Dapolito, he's somebody that you want to be aware of for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's like it's really knowing the theme is so important as all three. So like, what am I exploring in this piece? What's the overall vision? What's the feel? What's the tone? Like, what am I asking? And then how are all the characters within that piece asking the same question? And so as a director, I look at all of that and then I try to make sure everyone's on the same engine. And then as a actor, I'm looking at like really, for me, I know like the theme in life generally that like really I'm always itching is like pining, you know, like unrequited love or pining. And what's interesting with Les Bomb is, you know, I started asking questions like, what am I pining for? And ultimately, it's my own self-acceptance.
Yeah.
You know, and so really just sort of poking at that and following those questions.
Yes, and I remember, you know, when we were working the script, we were talking about, you know, this is a coming out story, you know, and you know, if you haven't seen the movie, it's the main character has just fallen in love, and she's going home for Thanksgiving, and she needs to tell her family, and they have no idea that she's in love with a woman. They think that she's about to marry her roommate, who's a man. And you know, one of the things we found as we were working the script, and it was very organic, and I think it's often this way with theme, you know, is like theme is not something you put on the script. Theme is something you learn by like looking really deep at the script. And you know, as we looked really deep at that draft that you had been working on, what we found was, you know, it wasn't just the main character who was coming out, that all the characters were trying to come out in some way. And all of their coming out was interrupting each other's ability to come out. And just these people who just were having trouble, who all loved each other, but were having trouble being truthful with each other.
Yeah, and like where does that come from? Where does that, you know, you're talking about how important it is to live authentically, but where does that get kind of, where are those barriers to living your organic truth? And then an inability to come out with that truth or speak your truth. And then how does all of that collide in a family dynamic?
Yes. And, you know, and what's interesting is you still have those dramatic intentions underneath that you started with, you know,
Sure.
and that, you know, drama is no different than comedy. It's just a different tone laid over top, you know, but what's going on in the film is something that's close to your heart, that you're wrestling with, that you're trying to make sense of, you know, and I think that's, you know, you know, always kind of an inspiring thing if especially if you're kind of reaching into a genre that you're not comfortable with or that you haven't worked in before, is just realize, or like you write something you think is a drama and then you find out the producer wants to do it as a comedy, you know, or people are laughing and you're not exactly sure why. Has happened to me many times. So recognizing that, like, as a writer, you have so much control over tone, you know, that you can transform anything, but that you want those dramatic underpinnings, you know, you want like what you call the question underneath to be there, so that you have that kind of glue to tie the piece together.
Yeah, and I think what you were saying earlier is really important about making those choices on the page in the script, so that the actors and the director can make those choices, and not assuming that the actors and the directors are just going to figure it out. Because when you set, and I think you mentioned this in class the other day, and I thought it was like a really great way of putting it, when you put those borders in place, there's actually a lot of freedom when those borders are put into place. Because without those borders, there's too many tangents, and it's too easy for too many imaginations to get go off on blurry tangents.
Yeah, you see this so often in devised pieces, you know. You see this so often, unless the person is a really, really experienced and, you know, director and really experienced cast that has worked together a lot. You know, you see these beautiful moments that don't connect to each other, you know, and I see it a lot with independent filmmakers, and I want to like throw my body in between them. And, you know, it's like, you can't do that unless you really have money and really have a troupe. And, you know, you see these really beautiful movies where if the writer would have just spent another 2 weeks, you know, another 6 months, really finding a version of what happens, they would have ended up with a movie that held together so much more strongly, or a show that held together so much more strongly. And, you know, and you can even see this with great, you know, actors, you know, who come into an undeveloped script and they're trying to make it better, you know, even in Hollywood movies, but you see they can take it off the rails if you don't have that framework to play inside of. And
Right.
so giving yourself a framework, even if the framework is just like, well, I'm asking a question. I'm asking a question, or what am I pining for? What's everybody pining for? Or, hey, I have this idea and I want the story to kind of go like this. It almost doesn't matter what creates the border, but the border is actually our way into creativity because it focuses your mind.
Yeah, and then once you know what the feel of that is, from a directing standpoint, like looking through the lens, I'm like, well, does it feel like that?
Yeah.
Are we in the same world?
Absolutely. Am I actually living up to my own vision for the piece?
Yeah.
Or do I need a rewrite?
Yeah.
Or do I need to ask the actor to try something else? So we're kind of getting to the end here. So I guess my last question would be, for an actor who's looking to create a role for themselves, for someone starting their first script, or for someone looking to produce their first film, or to make the move from producing or directing a short to a feature, if you had one piece of advice to think about, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say that look at whatever makes you most uncomfortable, and then that's usually where you'll find the piece that you're supposed to write or the character you're supposed to play.
I love that. What a beautiful place to end. So yes, look for the things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And put yourself in positions that make you uncomfortable. Write the scene that you don't know if you can write.
Yeah.
Or share the scene that you're really scared to share, that you're afraid is terrible. It's those places where we step out of, our normal world.
Yeah, I will say the line in Lesbom, I won't give it away, but the line in Lesbom that made me the most uncomfortable on the page is the line that got the cast attached.
Give it away. They're going to watch it anyway. What's the line?
I don't want to be gay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the most controversial line. It still gives people opinions to this day, especially when taken out of context. Yeah. That was the one I was uncomfortable to write, the one I was uncomfortable to say on screen, and the one that I was uncomfortable to keep in the movie. And that was the most important line in terms of getting the film up and running and in conversation and having an impact.
Yeah, it's powerful. It's powerful. And and what a beautiful place to end, right? Is to remember that I always say to my beginning students in my Write Your Screenplay class, if I asked you to give me your best writing and just to cut out your worst, you would actually give me your worst and you'd cut out your best.
Yeah.
Because especially newer writers, right, we tend to feel good about the things that reflect what we have seen in other movies, right? Or things that reflect the feelings that we're supposed to have, rather than the ones that we're actually trying to make sense of, that are acceptable in our society, as opposed to the ones that make us doubt ourselves and how we fit in. But it's actually that voice, those questions, that weird part of you, right, that is going to allow your script to transcend and to get noticed and to stand out from everybody else, because that's where your voice comes from. And what we're doing on the page is we're wrestling with feelings, and what happens to your character is, by you having the courage to put that line in, she actually is able to move through that line, right? She's actually,
because it's on the other side is so much brighter, and taken out of context, it doesn't sound positive. But once past that, and as a person, me too, like as soon as I was comfortable with my sexuality, life was so much better.
Yeah.
I love my sexuality now.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So, well, thank you, Jenna. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Go watch Lesbom, And that's for all of our audience. Go watch it, and thank you for sharing your time and your experience with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me and being my mentor and teacher.
It's truly a gift to get to work with you. Okay, I'll see you soon, Jenna.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you're enjoying this podcast and it's helping your writing, then come study with me and my faculty. We offer world-class screenwriting and TV writing classes live online from anywhere in the world. We also have a unique ProTrack mentorship program that pairs you one-on-one with a professional writer who will read every page you write and mentor you through every phase of your career. For more information, visit writeyourscreenplay.com.